Welcome to OW2 Conference 2016. My name is Yuri Glickman. I'm the chair for OW2 board, and I'm glad what we all met together today here. This is our annual conference, which we organize every year. Many thanks to our sponsors, to Mozilla Foundation for hosting the event, and to all our sponsors which are supporting us. Such events like this one is very important for our community because we get the possibility to meet each other at least once a year, exchange ideas, and check what is the status of our community, where we go, what are our key ideas, where we will go next year. And such events are there for communication. So I welcome all of you. Don't hesitate to come, introduce yourself, and speak to each other. And discuss with your projects, ideas, establish new collaborations, and help our community to become stronger. I will not speak anymore. I give a word to Cédric, because we have a very intensive program. I think all of you have checked the program. We have many interesting presentations this year, and I think we need to keep time for the most important part of the conference. Thank you.
Thank you, President Glickman, for this introduction and the kind words, and thank you all for being here. I'm Cedric Thomas. I run OW2. A couple of housekeeping announcements before we really get into the core of this conference. Since you see the way we are organized here, if you need to move, please use that door over there. And this evening there is a big sports bar at the other side of the avenue, and if you want to join us, you'll share a beer, you'll be welcome. So, I have a presentation here for you to set the stage for this, the theme of the conference, and to update you on what OW2 is doing with regard to Code 2 product. So we try to position OW2 in the value chain of open source software, and right from the onset we've analyzed that open source was not only a way to collaboratively develop software, but also a way to develop business, open source being a business strategy. I'm going to share with you a couple of reminders, slides you've probably seen about our context. And first of all, I have to pay my respects to the 4 freedoms that govern our activity and that were defined over 30 years ago. So the first one is the right to use the software for any purpose. The second freedom is the one to read the code, to be able to read the code. The third one, if it comes, it's the freedom to redistribute the software, same way you would do with a good book, you can share it. And the fourth freedom is the one to modify the software and to redistribute these modified copies of the software. These rules, 4 simple rules, have had the power to change the software industry. But open source, free software and open source is not just these 4 rules. It's been a whole evolution. I said 30 years ago. Those were defined 30 years ago. And open source software, free software and open source software is not a monolithic thing. We identify 3 big models, or 3 key categories of floss makers. You have the developers, the geeks. Open source or free software started with them, started with an ethical and values to share the software and to regain possession of their own creation and to control the results of their creativities. The second category, or the second category of makers, are the entrepreneurs. Because towards the middle of the 90s, something happened and free software became open source software, became commercial open source software. And open source became really an industry or market industry strategy. And then around 2010, with cloud computing, with the explosion of big multi-vendor technologies and platforms, we had a third category of flows makers, and these are the committees. Big collaborative projects, including OpenStack, including Genevieve, including Open Daylight. Big companies realized that open source could be the vehicle, the mechanism through which they could collaborate, through which they could jointly develop new technologies without making a mistake, without investing in a technology that nobody will follow. And so they want to be in the pack, and the only way to make sure that you make the right decision, that you don't reinvent the Minitel, it's to actually work together with the other people and collectively define what should be the roadmap, the trajectory of the technology you're working on. The open source context is also defined by third-party organizations. We have development teams, the companies, this big project, but there is also another category of stakeholders, of flows makers, and these are the third-party organizations. I'll start with the bottom. You have those that define the standards. The standards are a common vocabulary. Then you have those organizations that support open source, that advocate, that defend open source, that promote open source, such as April in France. And then going up, you have some organizations or companies, often non-profit, that provide the legal context for open source software. Open source being a collaborative endeavor. Open source is based not on a power play, but it's more based on respecting collaboration rules. So the rules of the games are given by the open source licenses, and these licenses are fostered by third-party organizations, especially OSI and Free Software Foundation. And then we move on to the technologies. This layer of technologies, the first one, concerns those interest groups. They are loosely coupled groups of people, not so organized, and they've given us some of the best technologies. Then you have those that are called product line organizations. They are very efficient, they're very market-driven, and they've provided us with some of the key products that we are actually using today throughout the market. But if you realize all these organizations at this level, they're all driven by a private company, a commercial company. OpenOffice is driven by Oracle, Ubuntu by Canonical, Mozilla has a profit-making company within it, Xen by Citrix, Fedora by Red Hat, etc. You can think of your own examples. They're good for the communities, but they're also good for their companies. They're not independent. The top layer is the layer of the independent organizations. And we claim to be among those. We claim to be an independent organization governed by a multi-party board of directors, and that's the same for the Linux Foundation, the Eclipse Foundation, the Apache Foundation, the OpenStack Foundation. These are the organizations with which we compare ourselves. So that's our context. Now, to set the stage for the theme of this conference, we should get started with the code. Software is code. Code, characters somewhere. That's essentially what it is. Code you can download. Code you can read, improve, and share, of course. But nevertheless, code that, for somebody like me, doesn't mean much, especially if I look at this, the graph at the top left. And for somebody like me, or for any kind of decision maker, we will need a little bit more than that. If you intend to do business with code, with a piece of software, then you got to change your mindset, and you got to think of it as a product. Code as the basis for business is a product. And a product is what you sell. But it's not just the code. It has a lot of things. A software product is code plus documentation, packaging, roadmap, training, upgrades. That's what a decision maker wants to buy, including support, training, etc. And that's what actually gives value to the code. Of course, you have a whole value chain where research and development develops the code, proof of concepts, you can have use cases, demonstrators. But then what really gives value to your code is something people would call product marketing, something that is provided by suits. And that's, if code is the fundamental piece of the product, the rest is what really defines the value. And you realize that I've added a little bit of thing for open source governance, because in our context, what people want from the market is predictability, quality, and they want to trust it. And trust is what actually makes a project grow. It's what attracts third-party contributors. Today, you need to recognize that we're more comfortable, most of us, at developing the code and leaving the rest to other people. People we look down on because they're not as good and creative as those that create the code. And that's what we call the delivery challenge. We've had that in mind at OW2 for some time. And since OW2 wants to be part of this value chain, we know we can trust you to develop the code, and we've given us our mission to grow our code base, but also to help you address this delivery challenge. And looking at the value chain and things that we've been doing for the last 10 years now, there are a couple of lessons, 4 lessons, that I'd like to share with you. The first one, obviously, is that code is only a fraction of the software value chain. That decision makers expect full market-ready offerings. They don't want code that they can tamper with. They can tamper with, but they don't want code that it's not something to play with. It's something that has to be professional. The second lesson is that collaborative development very often stops short of delivering market-ready offerings. You can even think of OpenStack. This is a very good example. OpenStack is a toolbox. Deliver lots of bits and pieces technologies. But the money can be made by service companies that provide service integrating all that. But it is also made in terms of products by those commercial companies selling distributions. And you have the Red Hat distribution, the HP distribution, etc. You think of Linux. You have the Linux from the Linux Foundation, that you can download. You would be very comfortable at downloading, but personally, I'm more comfortable at downloading Ubuntu, which is a distribution. A third lesson that is a bit less obvious, you have to realize that the successful open source projects are all supported by major companies and IT companies. These companies you see there are not associated, naturally associated with open source. And yet, they put millions of dollars in open source projects. They put dozens of people in open source projects. They understand that open source is something that brings value to them. They have a strategic vision of what open source is. They want to have a say in where open source is going or what is developed. They want to keep, not control, but they don't want to let open source go like that. They understand that it's part of the market, part of the industry. And even if you look at the top right logo, well, you have to know that the president of the Apache Foundation is a full-time employee of that company you would not naturally associate with open source software. So there is, it's the magic in some project is that they grow and they explode without being supported by these companies. But that's historical, that's a little bit of magic, that's a bit random. It's based on its serendipity, this kind of word. But big companies in the IT industry to make money, even telcos, equipment vendors, software companies, systems integrators, hardware manufacturers, they don't want to depend on serendipity. They want to control their future. They have stockholders they report to. So they are being more and more proactive, and I think that's an evolution we should consider. And the last lesson is that these successful collaborative projects, they implement flawless governance. That's very easy to understand. These big companies that agree to work together, share codes, share efforts, and put together some of these, they don't want all this to be captured, to be under the control of one of these partners. They want to play on a ground that is really neutral, with a guarantee of neutrality. And that's why you have these foundations. That's exactly why OpenStack, that started under the umbrella of Rackspace, moved to become an open source foundation. That's exactly why some projects are being developed within the Linux Foundation, within the Eclipse Foundation, and why we are developing projects and developing initiatives under the umbrella of OW2. Because those organizations can actually provide a recognized neutral governance. That's the role, one of the roles that we play. Now, an update on OW2. An update on OW2. This slide, you've seen it probably at least 10 times, because it's a slide we designed in 2006 when we were preparing the launch of OW2. And it still works. So we're still executing this long-term plan. And that's OW2 in one picture, and I will zoom in each of these parts. But basically, our mission is to develop a code base of infrastructure software. So the code base is our raison d'être. This code base is developed by a community. That community works in the framework of activities. These activities are governed by rules from this open source governance, and we can all work, we're all very comfortable and independent because we have our members that pay our fees and that guarantee our independence. We can be neutral. The code base. We run some 100 projects. They govern along a life cycle. So we have 35 projects in incubation, some 25 in a mature state. Those are our elite projects, if you like. And we have 40 projects that are in archive. Those projects to the right of the screen, Lutes, NanoCloud, Vespa, SidStack, IMXXS, and Prelude, those that have had some news for you, and 4 of them, SidStack is new in the OW2 codebase, And the other 4 have achieved mature status, have been upgraded to mature. Stéphane Laurière, our CTO, will explain in a session dedicated to the Technology Council. The community is global. There are about 40 organizations around us. I must confess that only 25 of them pay their dues, but I've been discussing with other organizations and they're all in the same situation, more or less, if that can be reassuring. We have over 2,200 members, 6 associate organizations, including Eclipse Foundation, DMTF, Association Software Libre in Brazil, for instance. And we are present across 20 events on 3 continents. The graph you see at the bottom shows the inner circle is the total breakdown of those 2,000 members. And the outside circle shows the evolution in the last 12 months, showing that the blue part is about Europe, and our growth in Europe is stronger than in any other part of the world, even France. In the activities, I'll mention the project. I'm not going to repeat about the project, but I want to mention the initiatives. So we have 5 initiatives running and 1 that is in preparation. So an initiative, again, it's beyond the project. It's a joint effort by OW2 members to put together projects, develop platforms or stacks, and address a market need. So an initiative is market-focused. We have the Big Data Initiative, the Open Source Cloud Initiative, Privacy and Security Initiatives, for which we will have a session, Future Internet Software and Services Initiative. We have the Open Source Accessibility Initiative that has been launched recently and for which we will have a dedicated session tomorrow. And we're working on a session called Open Source in Big Cities Initiative, for which we can talk later. The governance. We have a governance that has weathered the ups and downs of an open source organization for 10 years. So it runs. Of course, there are little holes here and there. We're still learning because the situation changed, new situations appear, and we have to adapt our governance. What you see there, it's covered by the bylaws, plus a set of binding documents, the legal compliancy, IPR policy, trademark policy, etc. This is enforced by 2 decision bodies, which are the Board of Directors and the Management Office. And then we have all the activities part with the project submission process, the book of procedures to how we run things, the initiative charter that defines what is an initiative, the mature project criteria that define how project evolves along the value chain, etc. And these are governed by the management committees of each activities on one hand and overseen by the Technology Council on the other hand. In terms of finances, our independence, our budget is roughly 600,000 euros per year compared to much more in the other organizations with which we compare ourselves that have a budget into starting at $3-4 million up to $15-20 million. So we are an outsider. I don't want to say we're a niche player, but we're an outsider. But we do our job, and we are the only of those organizations that is grown out of Europe. Financially, we're okay. We need to be very careful with cash management, and we need to end the year with lots of cash because members take their time in paying their dues. So we start the beginning of the year with not much money, and we really need to have cash in order to be able to get through the first 3-4 months. So that's the situation. That's the forecast for 2016. And the bottom graph shows the breakdown of our resource. For the first 3 years, we were relying only on membership payments, and since then we've introduced a collaborative project, and we rely on subsidies by collaborative projects. And what you see here is that the red parts are the collaborative projects for the last 5 years, and the blue is the membership fees. but that's what we have to do to maintain our financial independence. So all this makes us an ecosystem platform, an ecosystem platform. What's a platform? A platform is essentially something that addresses the needs of different kinds of segments, market segments. On one hand, we have the code producers, this community here, and on the other hand, we have the users, and we need to address the users. So we need to be like a channel to the users. So we need to attract the users. We also need to attract the peer users to grow our code base. And we have to organize the feedback loop. And we do that by providing, like all platforms, 3 key services: infrastructure services or technical services, governance services or rules of engagement, how we all work together, plus efforts to position the whole thing onto the market. Quick update on each of these key services. In the infrastructure, we are evolving our infrastructure. There is a migration in progress towards more up-to-date technologies, and we want to offer a better service to our members. We are integrating and working on an SSO, and Stéphane Noyer will detail this tomorrow at the Technology Council session. We're using the Fusion Directory, which is one of our projects, which will be presented at this session, at this conference. In terms of the government layer, a quick update here would be that we are evolving the way we manage, we follow, and we support the projects. I've been talking a lot here about the SQUAD program, Software Quality Assurance and Trustworthiness, which was launched in 2010 with the ambition to actually put together data about each project in order to increase the transparency and the information available for the users in order to facilitate the decision-making by the users. So that we want them to feel comfortable with the project by sharing with them data about the project. So we're evolving this. We took part in a collaborative project called RISCOS that added a little bit of more methodology. That started 4 years ago, and now we're integrating all this. We're upgrading it by taking into consideration qualities such as ease of deployment, and I think we will evolve in taking into consideration maybe the accessibility of the project to be consistent with our activities. And this is evolving into a project that Stéphane again is leading, which is called OSCAR. OSCAR standing for Open Source Capability Assessment Radar, and we're very pleased to have. And this is how we met with David Wheeler, and we'll be very pleased to exchange on this topic. Key update on our Marcom or outreach. You know that we take part in many events in the world, so that's business as usual. But maybe something I need to mention here, and it's that the marketplace I've been announcing for the last 2 years is now ready. It's open for business. You're welcome to go to the directory. So you log on. It's still called AppHub until the end of the year, and we're working on this with our members, Fraunhofer Focus and UShareSoft. So now it's a marketplace where you can go to the directory to register your project. You can create your templates, and users can actually go to the store, discover the project, customize the templates, and actually deploy the software from the marketplace to their cloud account. That's quite sophisticated, and after January, what's important is that, and what I was announcing last year, we will open up the store to, the store will be the place where code developers will be able to showcase commercial services. So from the store, you will be displaying your project, but you can also display or advertise or showcase the training services, expertise, hosting services, into systems integration, etc. Even highlighting the partners you can have you have on this project. So the store can become one of the a nice product promotion place. All this is possible because we are a professional organization with a permanent team dedicated. So you've met Lakshmi Ramagopalan, who's gave you your badge, and it's just be there. Catherine Nuel is our event manager and has helped us put everything together here. Stéphane Laurière, here our CTO. Olivier Bouzereau, you know already, is our event coordinator, community coordinator, and follows the collaborative projects. We have Martin Amand, our sysadmin, who runs our architecture and who's busy working and evolving the whole infrastructure. And we have à la technique, where up there, Olivier Lizuna, who's the webmaster and who's video capturing all this, and we will process this so that all this will be published, all the presentations will be published on websites. And in China, who could not make it today, George Liu, who's our coordinator for with China, because we have a significant Chinese community.